Hello, everyone. It's I, Zhylaw. This is a special report. DRM. What is it? Why should you care if you're not a filthy pirate? Um, I'm going to keep this as general as I can be, with the idea that this is for a layman who has no idea about any of this stuff. So I'm not going to go quite into detail and specifics. So people who are extremely well versed might think that some of the things I talk about is an oversimplification. This is correct. I'm just trying to help people understand the generalities. Okay? All right. DRM. Games. Companies make games. And games are basically data on a hard drive. So data can be copied quite easily. And as internet speeds and technologies got improved, it's easier and easier to copy games. Now, people don't see it as stealing as much as traditional physical stealing because, in their mind, it's a copy, so the original owner has it, but it's not the original owner it's being stolen from. It's the game publisher who says you're stealing by not buying a copy and getting it for free. Now, whatever your stance on piracy is irrelevant as far as this goes in this video and the DRM issues I'm presenting to you, because DRM has its own issues that it creates for regular consumers that has nothing to do with piracy. So I don't want to get into detail. I don't want to go into it about whether or not you think piracy is okay. I personally am vehemently opposed by disgusting pirates, but that's not the point here. And the idea is I want to explain why DRM is bad for people, even if you agree with me that piracy is bad. So companies, in order to combat piracy, invented DRM, digital rights management. The idea that they'll have systems in place to prevent you from just copying games, so that you have to buy it. Back in the day, it was like CD key checks, got the CD in the drive. You would, like, I remember super old school games would have it like before you could continue, an NPC would ask you to turn to a page in your manual and type in like something. So because this was back before they even had the internet, so you couldn't even like get a PDF of the manual. So they figured if you had the manual, you had to own the game. Those kind of DRM issue, while unfortunately they were easily cracked, so they moved on from them. I had no problem with those because they didn't really punish people who haven't done anything wrong. Unfortunately, while today's DRM is also much more powerful, it's also much more anti-consumer. So what is DRM and what is the problem? Okay, first of all, you have to understand there's different kinds of DRM. In particular, there is like account-based DRM, and then there's more hardware DRM. Now, account-based DRM means that you have to have an account somewhere, and some people would not even consider this DRM. And I don't want to get into like the definitions either, but for the sake of argument, let's say that accounts could be considered a form of DRM, as in addition to owning the game. Okay, in addition to owning the game, you have to create an account with some company on some website. And the problem with that is what happens if the company goes out of business, which happens. I was actually just trying to play Majesty 2 recently, and I found out the Majesty 2 collection, you can no longer access most of your DLC on Steam because you need to connect to the server. Brilliant job, Paradox. There's a server connection required to access like the expanded content, and the servers no longer exist because hey, the game's been out for a few years, so fuck you, right? Of course, they're still selling the game, profiting from it, but like a big chunk of the game is actually missing and broken. So yes, account-based issues are DRM, and it's a problem. The idea of no DRM is obviously cool and all. GOG has games with no DRM. Unfortunately, the library is somewhat limited by the simple fact that the idea of no DRM makes publishers shit their pants. Steam, now I myself, as a modern gamer, I have accepted that, Lord Gaben, that a limited amount of DRM is a necessary evil and a compromise we have to make if we want to play games. So Steam, while it's a great source of games and a great digital library, it also on the basic level works as DRM. And that is the level of DRM that I'm willing to accept. It's not particularly intrusive. Steam has an offline mode, and it doesn't really fuck up your games. I'm not too worried about Steam going out of business. And Lord Gaben even said that if they ever go out of business, they'll try to remove online activation. I mean, that's mostly PR pandering, but at least he said that, right? And just because you accept one form of DRM doesn't mean that you need to take more, because every additional layer of DRM on a game is one more DRM that could fail when a company goes belly up and then you can't access your games anymore. Like for example, again, Majesty 2, the Steam aspect DRM of Majesty 2 still functions, but the additional account-based issues from Paradox cause the game not to function. So every game on Steam, has the Steam basic package plus publisher-induced DRM potential. On top of that, it's like layers on a cake, and each layer has another, just multiplies the capacity to fuck things up. Now, account DRM isn't even the biggest issue. Account DRM is very basic, and it's not usually catastrophic, but there's another kind of DRM, which is, and also I want to point out that online DRM is usually, they disguise it as a benefit to you by giving you access to goodies like freaking Rockstar's Social Club or something like that, where it's like a community thing. So at least they try to package it nice for you. But there's another kind of DRM, as I was saying, hardware-based DRM, which has literally no benefit for you. They don't even try to pretend that it has a benefit for you. And it's also the most insidious and dangerous form of DRM. Back in the day, there was a form of DRM called SecuROM, which installed a secret rootkit in your computer, which you could not uninstall and would remain even after the game was uninstalled to track your hardware, because if you, just in case you reinstalled the game, I guess was their fucked up thinking, and so you had to make sure that it wasn't installed in other computers. And SecuROM would cause games not to work, and it would cause computers to slow down. It caused serious problems with computer functionality. It was really fucked up. Plus, just the idea of rootkits and secret installations drove people insane, as rightly it should. And SecuROM eventually was a failure because it was also easily cracked. And it went the way of the dodo. There was Games to Windows Live, which Microsoft pretended to be some sort of PC games initiative, but really it was just DRM, and it was shit, and it worked like shit. And guess what? They pulled the plug on it, but they didn't make the games that required it function. So it was up to the publisher of the games that required Games to Windows Live to make the game work without it. Some of them, the companies don't exist anymore. Other companies just didn't give a shit. So there's a bunch of games on Steam that require Games to Windows Live that no longer function because Games to Windows Live no longer exists. And Games to Windows Live was a separate program you had to install. Plus, it was account-based, and it was also connected to the installation. It was built into the game itself. Certain games that use Games to Windows Live, depending on how it was integrated, you can patch it out. Certain Games to Windows Live games could still function, just not certain parts of the game worked, and you just had menu issues. Fun, and some of them just do not work. Just do not work. The Windows Store, which is basically Games to Windows Live 2.0. Is Microsoft's new PC gaming initiative, where they sell you PC games, and some of them are exclusive to their store because they're Xbox ports. But it's a closed ecosystem, and you can't take those games out of Windows Store. and I have no faith in that in anything remotely regarding that ecosystem, and I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. But the worst of the worst is Denuvo. Denuvo is actually in many ways a follow-up to Securom, and some people involved with Denuvo actually worked on Securom. It's like the next gen almost. And Denuvo is hardware-based DRM, so that means it's invisible to you and it has no benefit to you like they pretend account-based DRM does. So what does Denuvo do? Denuvo is part of the game. When you install the game, Denuvo is in the game itself. When you first play the game, first of all, you have to have online access. Not a huge deal if it's a Steam game because you need to be online for that to activate this game on Steam for the first time. But when you play the game, it sends data to the Denuvo server with a list of your computer's specs. Not your specs, like your actual hardware, like the serial numbers for the actual physical parts of your computer. And every time you play the game, you have to be online every time, and it checks to make sure it compares the all the pieces of your computer to the list in the server, and if a part is different, then it's considered a fresh activation, and depending on how many activations they graciously allow you. You could temporarily or permanently lose access to your game because in their minds it's a license, a rental. You're not owning the game. They grace you with 5 activations, and when you upgrade your GPU or your motherboard, GPU actually I don't think GPU triggers it, but your motherboard, like the CPU, like certain parts, or you get a new computer, or let's say you're a college student and you're staying at your parents' for summer break or Thanksgiving or whatever, and you install your Steam account, your parents' computer, you want to play your game, you play that game, it's all it knows is new computer. It doesn't know you're the same person. It doesn't give a fuck that it's the same Steam account because it doesn't care about the account. It cares about the hardware because it's by the computer, not by the owner, and it uses an activation. So you can lose your games. And this is on top of the fact that since it's 100% server dependent, if Denuvo ever goes belly up, or even if they just have, I don't know, there's a blackout for a week or 3 days, you can't play Denuvo games for 3 days. And that's on top of the potential issues with Steam. So yes, this Steam is already, I know, but now you have 2 things to worry about instead of 1. And Denuvo's keeping track. They're watching you. Now, exactly how much information they keep, some people say that your hardware is attached like a random number, so they don't actually know the specifics, so they can't use it for marketing. And maybe that's true. Honestly, I don't even care about that. That's just something else to worry about. But the aspect that you change anything, you upgrade your computer, you buy a new computer, you burn an activation. You run out of activations, you lose your game. And that's on top of the online issue of what happens when Denuvo goes down. And if that's not good enough, and I hope it is, there have been many reports of Denuvo games causing malfunctions and hardware issues and computer slowdowns. Now, I cannot confirm, and I don't want to get bogged down into that's not true, or it's it's the game that's wasn't optimized. It's not because it used Denuvo, or whatever. I'm just pointing out that that's another possibility, and there is some evidence to suggest that Denuvo does cause issues on your computer, either just performance for the game or performance in general. But in my mind, they lost me at activation. That was enough. I don't even need the worry about their servers going down. I don't need to worry about the performance. You lost me in activation. So I don't touch Denuvo games. And I try to avoid online activation games. So it doesn't matter if you're not a pirate. That's why people that's what you don't understand. That's why people don't understand that this severe egregious DRM will punish the lawful owners, regardless of what it does to pirates. If it even stops them, there are already there's discussion of de novo being cracked in certain games. De Nouveau says, oh, well, everything's cracked eventually. The whole point is stopping the crack from the launch window so that, it won't be available in the first 2 weeks or something. Well, if that's true, why is De Nouveau not removed from a game years after release? Lords of the Fallen still has De Nouveau. That game is older than dirt. And by the way, that game ran like shit, and many people believed it was because of De Nouveau, but some people blamed the game. I don't know. Maybe it was De Nouveau, but it was an earlier version of De Nouveau because Lords of the Fallen was one of the first games to use De Nouveau. But Lords of the Fallen definitely had some serious problems with performance. And you only need to look at games like Majesty 2 or try to play Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition. Here's a hint. You want to play Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition? Get a Xbox. Get the Games for Windows Live disabler. And just be thankful that someone created that and that it wasn't integrated very greatly, so you can remove the GFWL or try and play the old fucking Bulletstorm. You can, but you gotta dodge that bullshit. Or if you even have it anymore, because Bulletstorm was removed for the new Bulletstorm, and guess what? Like they didn't learn a lesson. With Games to Windows Live, because previous Bulletstorm doesn't even work now. The new Bulletstorm uses De Nouveau. Fuck you, Cliffy B. I wanted to get Conan Exiles, and I was heartbroken to hear that it uses De Nouveau. I mean, it's an online game with player servers. It's on Steam. What the fuck does it need De Nouveau for? Stay losing, Funcom. And I want to show you guys a website that you should absolutely bookmark and look at before you buy any games on Steam. It is PCGamingWiki.com/the big list of third-party DRM on Steam. This is an incredibly useful, extremely important website. It is managed by volunteers like wikis, and it has a list of every game that you can buy on Steam that has any form of DRM beyond the basic Steam DRM. Account-based DRM, games that required GameSpy. GameSpy no longer exists, so you can play the games, but online no longer works. Games to Windows Live games, some of them which no longer function, and some of them which you could get around. Games that require that bullshit Calypso launcher, Social Club bullshit, the Stardock account. Uplay, fuck Uplay, by the way. I mean, forget DRM. Not only is Uplay DRM, it requires an additional software to be installed, another third-party launcher, because I know when I'm playing a game, I want to have Steam, Uplay, Origin, and 5 other programs running in the background, making my computer go slower. And then beautiful, good old hardware-based DRM. You see this list right here? This is the list you most definitely want to look at. De Nouveau. De Nouveau. These are the games you unfortunately cannot play if you give a shit about your privacy and your future ability to play games that you own. But Zhylaw, I don't care about all this shit. I mean, I can still play my games, right? I don't want to be, thinking and be active, and I want to play my games. I'm just a gamer. Don't make me, go outside and protest. Oh, I don't know. I lost my train of thought there. But, I understand you just want to play your games. It's like fuck. I really want to play this game, but it has DRM. Well, I just want to play this game, so I'll cry, but I'm still going to buy it. No, bad. You're going to regret it one day when you can't play it anymore. And if you want game companies to stop shoving things in your ass without asking, then you need to vote with your wallet, because literally the only thing they care about is money. Regardless of your stance on whether or not piracy is acceptable, more and more restrictive DRM is not the answer. And now it's not just about piracy anymore. They're using piracy as a cover and an excuse to try to make games a service, an experience, a license instead of ownership. And in many ways, it's kind of already happened. I mean, I know Steam, when you have your Steam account, technically it says license to play. I know, okay, but there's the technical shit, and there's, basically, and how things are. Regardless of what that stupid little agreement that pops up says that no one reads, you own your games, and I own my games, and no one's taking my games. But once you start talking about limited activation, like as a spaceship launch instead of just a game installation, that's when you really lose ownership of your games. When some computer program on a server 1,000 miles away, gets a bip whenever you install a game and checks to make sure you have that it's the same computer with the same exact computer parts. And if it's not, then it freaking gives you a black mark or something, and you only have so many of those to go before they give you the big X and say buy the game again. That's a problem. So DRM is bad, and certainly there are different levels of badness. Okay, account-based DRM is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, especially like certain games that are online games, like MMOs or or a CCG, something like that, where your account data is stored online, so you could play the game elsewhere. That's for that, it's barely even DRM. You just need an account. It's just common sense, and in that case, when the server goes down, it's you can't play it anymore anyway. Like for City of Heroes, it's an MMO, so when the servers went down, you can't log in. You won't be able to play anyway because there's no people. So in certain situations, that sort of thing is okay. Steam is the great compromise that we made in modern society, so we can play games and at least try to limit piracy. And Steam is a pretty awesome platform, so it's become so much more than DRM. Praise Gaben. But they're not all the same, and you have to draw the line somewhere. And I personally draw the line on anything that requires me to install and run additional third-party software, like Uplay or Origin, or the Microsoft Store, or that new Twitch launcher bullshit. And I absolutely draw the line at that fucking limited, data gathering, secret, de novo hardware shit. And you should too. And this has been a special report. DRM for dummies, laymen, normal folks, on why you should care even if you're not a filthy, filthy pirate.